The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't clone you, but it can streamline your hiring workflow. From posting jobs to shortlisting candidates to interviewing, LinkedIn Hiring Pro is the hiring partner you need, so you can focus on connecting with the right talent. In fact, small businesses report saving over 6 hours per week. So hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Growing a successful business has never been easy. But whether you're navigating a complex industry or trying to reinvent one, our breadth of banking experts are here to collaborate on market-proven solutions. At KeyBank, we're built to grow with your changing needs because we're not just here for the business you are now, we're here for the business you'll become. Reimagine business as usual. KeyBank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ricarda van der Walt. Ricarda is a qualified nutritional therapist, wife, and mother of 4, passionately guiding busy, stressed, and often overwhelmed individuals toward vibrant health. After experiencing IBS and stress-related symptoms following her second pregnancy and seeing her daughter battle eczema, Ricarda embarked on a personal journey of healing. She discovered the power of food, lifestyle, and natural interventions, inspiring her to train in nutritional therapy and help others flourish. With a step-by-step 12-week program tailored for worn-out, time-poor individuals, Ricarda helps clients overcome digestive troubles, fluctuating energy levels, and low immunity. Using naturopathic principles, personalized nutrition, functional testing, supplements, stress reduction strategies, and ongoing coaching, she empowers her clients to build lasting foundations for well-being. Well, Ricarda, I'm excited to have you on the show today, so welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Leslie.
It's great to have you. So this series is about health and vitality. Health and vitality by design is actually what I named the series, and how to sustain our well-being through intentional living. And so I've called in experts like yourself who will talk about functional health, emotional regulation, energy management, and restorative success strategies. So I'm really glad to dive into this topic today with you, especially because of your own personal journey to wellness, and have you kick off this series for this month of April. So thanks again for saying yes to being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Well, you're a qualified nutritional therapist. You're a wife. You're a mother of 4. Your work was born from your own experience with IBS, stress-related symptoms, and watching your daughter struggle with eczema. Can you take us back to that season and share what was actually happening in your body and what ultimately led you to pursue nutritional therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always interesting when we can look back and see and kind of see what happened and what transpired. But really, I had my first daughter was born, and 18 months later, my second one. So I had my first 2 very quickly after, one after the other. And I think I did have a certain level of maternal stress going on. And I think just trying to keep up with expectations, probably my own, put these on myself, most probably. And so by the time, my second daughter was born, I started having these symptoms of, bloating, cramping. And then with that was paired with this fatigue, just having to lie down, this big drop in energy and like brain fog as well. And I remember very vividly the one day, it was in the afternoon, I was lying on the sofa. My 2 little ones were playing on the carpet. And I thought to myself, this is not right. I should be out and about with my little ones, or going to the park, or, whatever, playing with them. But I just didn't have the energy. And I just felt, my stomach was sensitive and all of that. So did what most people do. I went to the GP, to the doctor, and was told, okay, you've got, it's IBS. They couldn't pinpoint anything specific. But I just started to, as the days and the weeks and the months went on, I started to put two and two together. And I realized it was every time I ate anything containing wheat. So I had a definite gluten intolerance, which I then started just to manage on my own, really. I started to reduce wheat intake or gluten intake, etc. And that did help. I did feel better. But it did take a while to kind of get used to that as well, because it was so easy just to be in the habit and grab something. And then I guess my second born, she was then about 15 months to about 1.5. And I stopped breastfeeding her. She had a mild chicken pox, and then it was like, I don't know if it was like a switch, but she started with eczema, and that took quite a number of years to get to the root cause, really. And I think many parents can relate to this. When, children have eczema, you kind of go through the list. Is it the laundry detergent? Is it the cleaning products? Is it the clothing? What is it? And you try and change everything, but nothing, there wasn't really anything that worked very well. I could see food-related things that would aggravate it. So I would try and keep her off dairy and gluten and sugar, but it was still there. And it was then during this time where I just decided, no, I need to educate myself. I need to understand the body better. I need to really get, gain more knowledge, really. And that is when I discovered the college in London, where I then studied. And through that, I came across functional health testing. And it was then that I said to my husband, I think we should get our gut tested, because there's this big link between the gut and many systems in the body, but also the skin. So that was really kind of the key for her. And we were then able to specifically target her gut. We saw what was out of balance in terms of her microbiome. And then we gave her, very specific supplements to help her rebalance her microbes. And that really shifted things for her skin, actually very, tremendously. Well, in about 8 weeks, there was no longer this redness. The itching was non-existent. It was a huge, huge turning point for her. And that just confirmed to me how important the gut health is for all of us. So that's kind of my journey. And,
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you talked about, like not only just your own journey, but just your own things that you were going through. And then, especially you're breastfeeding your daughter, maybe wondering, am I passing something on to her that she's going to not have to deal with? Right. I mean, because you're giving her parts of you. But again, I feel so personally I don't know how right I am. Of course, I'm not a doctor. I didn't study nutritional therapy like you did, but I guess part of like what I think and how true this is, I'm not sure. But I think a lot of the things that the food allergies and things like that are, I think, happening to us because of how people who manage our foods are creating the foods for us to eat, right? And so that's why I think it's so important for us to really be consciously aware of what we're putting in our bodies. Like you were saying, you developed a gluten intolerance, and growing up, you probably didn't even have any issues. I can relate to that because I developed in my early 20s a lactose intolerance. Whereas growing up, dairy was part of our everyday makeup, and so it's really interesting when you think about, like, as we get older, some of the things our environment changes and how that can affect us, and especially too with our foods and how our foods are being created for us to consume. And we have to be really super careful about that. So I love that you talked about that, but I also love that you talked about the other piece, like the gut health, a lot of people don't realize, again, I've heard this said before, is that our gut is our second brain,
Mm.
and how our gut does really kind of like make everything else start to either feel good or not feel good. Like, I don't know, a lot of my problems usually I knew would come from the gut. My husband's had eczema. He developed an adult onset eczema in his 40s and into his 50s. And so he's been dealing with that. And obviously, I think it has a lot to do with, like you're saying, the makeup of our inner working. So, and I love that's what you were doing. So we're gonna go deeper into that. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, so this podcast is for women, and I talk to a lot of women, specifically my guests that have come on the show, women in my community, women within my sphere that I've talked to on other platforms. I know that they are running on fluctuating energy a lot of the time because they're pushing and then they're maybe burning out and not understanding their energy and how it works. Like yourself, you said you had digestive discomfort. Sometimes they might ignore that and they might have low immunity. So what do you see? My question for you is, from your clinical experience, what are the most common root causes that you see behind patterns like this? And, why women, especially if they're ignoring these things, that they're just allowing this to be like, oh, well, this is life. This is the cards I've been dealt, and maybe they're not really taking it seriously enough to like go and check like at a deeper level instead of just taking the Band-Aid fix, like, oh, take this pill and you get the Band-Aid fix rather than going deeper and getting that to that root cause.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting in the body. Well, the body and the mind, right? Our thoughts, our emotions, everything is connected. And so what I see in women especially is they are the ones who kind of keep it all together. Sometimes it depends, where they're at, where we're at in our life. Sometimes it's you've got the kids and you've got the parents and you've got the work and you've got the household. There's so many balls that everyone is juggling. And I think women find it really hard to find the capacity and the energy to stop and think about themselves and just invest in themselves in terms of, okay, what am I going to, what does our food plan look like for this week? Or, where in my week am I going to find time to just have time for myself, to get my energy back? Everyone is different, so that looks different for every person. But I would say it is usually like a couple of things that would drain someone's energy, and stresses definitely plays a role because the stress affects the gut. If the gut, if the body's in stress mode, the gut isn't working. It's not priority. It's not working optimally. It's not going to digest all your food properly because it's in survival mode. And then on top of that, if the diet isn't good, if there's too many processed foods, too much sugar, etc., then all of that causes disruption and imbalance within the gut itself. So all of that plays into our energy production within our little cells, because maybe then what can happen is nutrients aren't absorbed as they should be. So the cells are lacking in the actual nutrients to produce energy. And there's a lot of oxidative stress going on. And the body is just not coping if this is a constant, long-term chronic type of thing that a person is going through. So in terms of lifestyle, the thing that I always try and do with my clients is to say, okay, what is the one thing you do for yourself every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, to help you de-stress? Because I think we don't always realize the stress that we carry. Many women will say, I'm not that stressed, but it can become so normal. It's a normal way of functioning that the person doesn't even realize it as well. So trying to help them find that one thing, even if it's, like I said, 5 minutes on a daily basis, just to help them relax, because that can that can benefit. I'm just going to give one example. It can benefit the digestive system, right? Which then can help the body to receive more nutrients if it works optimally. So that's a big thing, and of course the diet. If we're not giving our body the right fuel, it's very quickly gonna, it's those blood sugar spikes and then the crashes afterwards. That is not sustainable for our bodies, and it can make you feel worse. Even compared to before you have that bar of chocolate, you can feel worse afterwards. So the key is looking at lifestyle, but definitely the diet needs to be looked at as well. And there's always more facets, but that's usually where we need to start.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about while you were speaking is I have a lot of friends. Like, I'm not a mom, but I have a lot of friends who are moms. And I always wondered, like, I watched them as got older, watched their kids get older. It seems like the younger generation is tuning into these things obviously a lot quicker for whatever reason for the generation before them. And I think it's just because things are becoming more mainstream. People are talking about this more. But I remember seeing my friends, like the kids always came first, like everything about their family life. Yes, family is important. I really do truly believe that. But it came a lot of the time at the price of their own health or their own well-being. They took a back seat. Their quality of life really
Mhm.
wasn't, and it's not to say that the kids there was anything wrong like with them putting the focus on their children because obviously they wanted to raise really strong and healthy, vibrant kids. But I feel sometimes that as moms, especially because that is an expectation that women really are the child bearers and the child rearers, right? And so a lot of the time they take that back seat, like everyone else comes first. So I really like that it seemed like you were going down that road. Well, at least it sparked that for me to think about. One of the things that you talked about in the forum, like as we were getting ready to record an application form, you said that you'd love to talk about testing as a powerful strategy for gaining insight into your health. So I think we started to talk a little bit about that, about the testing piece. So can you walk us through what functional testing actually reveals and how it helps women? I think we've talked a little bit about it, but how it helps them to make more informed, targeted decisions instead of trying the random diets or the supplements, I guess, diagnosing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a journey for me, but the more I work with the functional testing or the health test that I work with, the more I want to work with it and the more I see the need for it because it's really such a good tool to get a deeper insight into the body. And there's so many options out there. Here in the UK, when you go to the doctor, they always have their standard blood tests and other types of testing. But there's more we can do and there's more we can see. And that's where the functional testing comes in. So, for example, there's a really great lab that I use, and they have a comprehensive stool test. So, this stool test looks at like it's the best stool test you can think of. It looks at all the pathogens. It looks at inflammatory markers. It looks at the microbiome, the levels of bacteria and the diversity and all of that, and so many other things as well. But instead of just honing in on one little thing, for example, I think I have a parasite or I have parasites, it actually looks at the big, big picture because there might be more than just this one thing that we picked up because we heard someone talk about it on Instagram. So, there are things like that where, yeah, I think it's so important and key to get that deeper insight. And then there's other tests where we look at the actual cells and we can see the makeup of the cell membrane and does the cell have everything it needs to function well, to let the nutrients in, to let the waste products leave? That's another example. And many times that's what I see from testing people for that specific test. Many people are missing the right nutrients for that as well. So it's just an amazing way of optimizing our food intake. So these tests then give the individual a black and white, something on black and white to say, hey, this is what's going on. But the solution is let's target it this way. Let's bring in the right foods. Let's bring in the right supplements. So there's a sense of ownership from the clients. There's an understanding that comes with it. And there's it just brings confidence because you know, okay, this is my body, this is where it's out of balance, but we have a plan and we can work towards restoring that imbalance. So I think it's just, it's just so powerful instead of, like you said, following something, the newest trend or everyone's talking about some supplement. But hold on, let's see, is this actually what your body needs, right? That's very important. And I think as time goes on, I'm excited to see what's going to be available in the next 5 to 10 years because technology is really, really changing so quickly. We'll be able to just scan ourselves at home every day if we wish and understand, if we're still on the right track.
Yeah. I love that. And one of the things, like, again, as you were speaking, I was talking about the self-diagnosis. A lot of people watch TikTok, they're watching YouTube, or they're searching on YouTube for what's wrong with me? Like, why do I feel this way? Why is my energy so depleted? Or why is this happening to me? And I know, especially on TikTok, there's so many, like, there's just, you can be overwhelmed by a lot of information coming at you, different people saying, well, try this remedy, do this,
Mm.
this works. And it's like, how do you know when it's real information and not just something made up? Because there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm sure is misinformation, which I'm sure you probably had conversations even with your clients around. Have you had that happen?
Yes, like I say, it's more the conversations I get is, well, for example, someone told me they're using this and it's great for them. It worked. It changed everything for them. And then they might even go and try it, but it doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't. And that just causes more frustration. And I always say to people, well, your body is so different to your friends or the person on TikTok or the person on Instagram. And so let's dive deeper and see what are you missing or what are you low in? What do you need to focus on? And so that's generally when I say, listen, your body will tell us. So, let's dive deeper with the test.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for responding to that question. So I was just curious, like because there is so much out there, so much information. I mean, we have this big worldwide internet that just tells us, at a click of a couple of keystrokes and you can get an answer to something. Is it the right answer? We don't always know. And could be a lot more misinformation leading you down the road to something that's being more frustrated and rather than getting the responses or the answers that you truly really do need in order to feel better. Which leads me to my next question
Yeah.
because you do have a 12-week program that is designed specifically for worn out time for individuals. So how do you help busy clients implement meaningful health changes without adding more pressure to an already full schedule?
So I always start and I have a really good long initial consultation, and that's where I gather all the information. And it's a good way then to make my assessment and understand. It's a great time to understand the individual, understand their life, understand their time. The time. Do they have time? Or I really I need to understand what are they struggling with, what are their challenges, etc. So again, it's so individual, but the easiest way to explain it is the best way for these persons who are time poor is, okay, let's focus on one thing. Let's change that. Let's make that one change for the next 4 weeks. And let's catch up again and see where you're at. For example, I did this recently for someone, and even though kind of the full diet needs to be changed and tweaked, we just started with breakfast because I understood that trying to do all the meals of the day at once and changing it just won't work for her. So we started with breakfast, and it was really a tweak. She was already having a good base, but we added in things and changed the portion size, etc. And it worked really, really well. And it just becomes part then. It becomes part of the routine. It becomes part of your lifestyle. And then we can bring the next thing in. Okay, so let's work on your hydration. Whatever the case might be. But it's doing it step by step, and I do see that is just a lot more sustainable for people. Otherwise, it's you just don't feel you have capacity if you try to do too much at the same time, and then they kind of just stop everything, and that's defeating the whole purpose of working with someone, that's how I see it. So I would rather work with someone a little bit longer and do it slower, take it slower, easy little steps, and get to reach that goal with them. I don't want them to feel it's just too much pressure. And it's also a great way for them to understand this one change, the effect that has, and we can talk about it and work through that. And then, yeah, it's a great journey, really. I love explaining to people as well, right? Why are we making this change? Because it has this effect in your body, etc. So, yeah, but I would say, to answer your question, it's one thing at a time. It's just taking it one thing at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time we're looking, well, especially if we're online and we're trying to figure out something that's been, I guess, plaguing us for a while, is that there's that impatience level, right? And it is a mindset thing too. Like you were saying, if you were to take all of the meals and try to do them all at one time, that could feel overwhelming. It might not look overwhelming on paper, but it might feel overwhelming to the person to say, oh, I have to do that and I have to do this. And it's just going to disrupt everything. And it feels like it's a bigger task than it truly is. And I think it's always like that power of like just doing one thing, adding one thing at a time. Like even me, like I've just learned energetically about learning how to add one thing into my routine to allow that to take root first and to see if it's what I want to continue doing before I start adding like a whole bunch of random things, which will just overwhelm me and use up a lot of my energy. And so I really love the fact that you are looking individually at each person. What are their goals? What's their mindset really? Because I think that's
Mm,
why you chose the one meal and helping her to see, okay, this is just make these tiny tweaks and she's now seeing results. That to me is huge, which then it
yeah.
can empower your clients to then, okay, like what's next? What can we do next? That empowers them rather than defeating them. So right from the get-go. So I love that. So we talked about stress, and I know that stress doesn't just affect our mood. It can impact our hormones, it can impact our digestion, it can impact our eating habits. I'm not sure if it can impact our immunity or not, but from a naturopathic perspective, how does prolonged stress show up? Like, what are the long-term consequences, really, if it goes unaddressed? Because I think just before you respond to that, I know that there is a high percentage, it's very high percentage of doctor's visits are primarily centered around stress. But typically, from what I've heard too, is that it doesn't really get addressed at the root level. And really, there's only this band-aid approach to stress and not really getting to that root cause. So, so I guess the question would be, what are long-term consequences if stress goes unaddressed? And what can they do to help effectively to regulate their stress so that, they're not constantly, maybe they're not having these issues with hormones or having these issues with their digestive issues, or like, how you were dealing with IBS, or if they are, how do they get to that root? Because I think a lot of the time I've just heard so many stories that it's they're not getting to the root. They're just saying, okay, well, what's your lifestyle like? Okay, we'll do more of this or do less of that, rather than getting to like the real root cause.
Yeah, so the long-term effects of chronic stress, right? That's
Hmm.
your question, and
Yeah.
again, it differs from person to person. But here's an example. So, and just to backtrack a little bit, yes, the immune system is impacted by our gut. So if our gut health isn't great, our immune system will be affected because our microbiome communicates with our immune system. So that's just kind of on the side. But yeah, absolutely. Here's an example. So when we're stressed, and I actually have a client at the moment who is highly stressed, this can really impact our sleep, right? some people may struggle to fall asleep. Some people are fine with falling asleep, but then they wake up in the middle of the night and their mind just starts going, and then they lying there for 2 hours, and that's kind of it. And they have this broken, constant night after night, either not good quality sleep, not enough sleep, disrupted sleep, which then can affect the energy levels the next day. They wake up, they don't feel rested at all, which impacts the mood, our levels of, our patience. Maybe we're more irritable, all these things. And then when our energy isn't great, we're just going to go for some types of foods that will quickly give us a quick boost of energy. And usually when we are tired as well, we do tend to eat more because your body is kind of trying to keep going in that sense. So I have experienced this actually, when the kids were young and I was breastfeeding through the night and all of that. So you have an interrupted sleep. You don't have a great sleep. And then I can so relate because I remember you're just snacking more than I was snacking more the next day. And as I was learning as well and studying nutrition, I understood then, it's everything is related. So this is one example. If this goes on continuously, the person can go into like an anxiousness type of state, anxiety, could even fall into depression because of the type of food that they might be grabbing onto or going for. They want quick and easy. Can't cope with extra stress about thinking about food and so forth and so forth. So this is just one example of what can happen if someone is chronically stressed. And things can go out of balance, the hormones, the hormone production. It could affect the thyroid. It could affect cortisol levels. Cortisol shoots up, stays up unnecessarily high, doesn't follow the natural up and down route or the cycle. So your body then holds onto fat, it doesn't burn fat that easily. So people tend to gain weight around the midsection, all those types of things. And it's so interesting when you asked about the root cause, because that's really what we need to address, isn't it, when people are highly stressed? And again, it differs. Most of the time, it is in the mind. It is a mindset. It is what's going on around them. It's circumstances. It's things actually they feel they need to stay in control when actually they just need to let go and say, it's not on my shoulders. It doesn't have to be, especially for women, for moms. And it's just understanding boundaries as well, I would say. We don't need to say yes to everything. We don't have to be at every event or, do it all. Healthy boundaries are really, really important. So the root cause will come out of journeying with an individual and asking all those questions and understanding their life. And sometimes it even goes back to their childhood. What happened in the childhood? When did this kind of type of eating, the way you're eating, when did this start? It started in childhood. What was happening around that time, right? So it can be so complex and it's so different for each person. But I would say those types of things are usually the root cause. And they're the external things of grabbing the food or the way we then react. That's just a reflection of what's going on in the subconscious and the mind.
Yeah. I love that you said that because a lot of the time we'll mistake the symptom as the root cause of our stress when it's just a symptom of what's happening because we're stressed, and what's then going deeper. What's the root cause of your stress? Like you're saying, it can go a lot deeper. It can go back decades. And I think a lot of the time as we're older, we think, well, how could something when I was 10 be affecting me when I'm 40? And we just don't realize that a lot of those things can still show up in the way we respond to things, whether we could have been hurt, we may have heard something specifically around food that we didn't even register at 10, but it's still affecting us at 40 and older. So I love that you talked about that. Well, I have a final question for you. So many many women, I think people in general believe that vibrant health really requires to be extremely disciplined, having a strict diet, especially if you're trying to lose weight. And that word diet really trips people up because they think that because it's diet, it means restrictive, that you can't have certain things. And I think I always look at it as like, okay, let's just talk about changing the lifestyle of how you eat, the things that like rest, going to like making sure you get ample sleep. How do you set up your space where you sleep, for like the temperature of your room, the darkness so that you can get get that deeper sleep that you want so you stay asleep. How do you make sure that you are setting yourself up that you're not online scrolling before you shut down for the night, things like that. But I know that I think there's that idea around diets or being like you have to be extremely disciplined in everything, almost perfect. And I feel like it's just really about lifestyle. It doesn't have to be I don't want to say this, but it's almost like it doesn't have to be such a big deal, but it, it just has to be something that really supports you overall. So, with that being said, what's a belief that you might have heard out there that people in general are believing? And what would you say would you want them to replace it with instead? Because I'm sure you've probably heard a lot of things.
Yes. So I do think that, and we have touched on this, but I do think people feel they have to change it all. They have to now go to the gym, get a membership, it's quit all the bad foods, like do it all, almost be like perfect in every sense. And that's just not attainable. Or from the people I work with, that's really hard to keep that going. So it really comes back to, for me, to just explain to them, just change one thing. Just start there, change one thing. We speak in our sessions, I speak in the wellness vision. What is your vision? So we are working towards something, and it is going to be a journey. So do not expect to take huge leaps. It is better to take one step at a time. And that usually just gives people, they feel more relaxed about it. They see the vision then because they speak it out. They say it comes from them, whatever their vision is for, how do they see themselves in the next 12, 18 months? And I think it's important even to ask those questions because we as women, I've never sat down unless it happened to me when I was in my own session with someone. They ask me these questions, but do we ever sit down and ask ourselves, what do I want for myself? How do I see my wellness? What do I want for my own wellness? Where do I see myself? What about my fitness and all these things? So it's really good to just go there, and it doesn't happen in the first session. It's more like the third or fourth. So people are, they know me better and they are really open, and it's beautiful to just journey with them like that, and for them to realize that they actually have a big vision, or actually they want to keep it simple. It will be different for everyone, but yeah, I think just taking that pressure off is really important, and understanding it's a journey. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Well, Ricardo, thank you so much. I really loved spending time with you today and hearing about your own personal journey into the work that you're doing, which I think is so important. I really believe because now we live in this age of the internet where people are doing their own self-diagnosis rather than really like getting to the root causes of things and actually understanding it from their own body's perspective and not through the lens of someone online, which doesn't mean that they're wrong, but it's like doing the research also from, as you were talking about, the functional testing. And I think that's really important. So I love the way that you've explained that, the connection. I love the way you explain the connection between gut health, between our digestion, the stress, the energy, the functional testing. I think that really, it makes it clear that vibrant health, it is possible, but it's not about guessing or pushing harder. It's not about rushing to the end of the story. It's actually a journey, and it's understanding what your body is actually asking for. So I've really loved hearing about how you help your clients, And the work that you're doing is so important. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and sharing your expertise.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it too.
Oh, thank you. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Ricarda directly and learn more about her 12-week program and the work she does in nutritional therapy, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, your health is not a luxury. It's the foundation that allows you to lead, create, to care, and succeed without constantly overriding yourself. When you listen to your body and you respond with intention, everything else becomes more sustainable. You're allowed to feel energized, you're allowed to feel clear, and you're allowed to design your well being on purpose. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Hey, business owners, the NFL season is a big revenue driver. Now there's a smarter way to get ready. EverPass is the only authorized commercial platform for NFL Sunday Ticket, delivering every live out-of-market regular season Sunday afternoon game. Lock in the best offer now with up to 40% off, saving up to $2,500. For the first time, you can pay over 9 months. Get up to 6 free devices and a free bar kit. Sign up by April 27th. Visit everpass.com. Limited time offer. Terms apply.
Why is it that games make us feel so good or completely rage quit? These emotions we feel are mostly not an accident. People like me designed them. I'm Chris Cross, and this is Brain Arcade, a podcast all about the psychology of game design and why games hit us so hard. Each week, I bring on a new guest, designers, psychologists, storytellers, to break it all down with me. If you play, design, or just love games, follow now.
Electricast.